Hello, in the last video that I made regarding the skywatching app that I developed, I talked about how I took the images from the south-facing camera and I was able to look at a portion of the image, namely this area here, and there was another area down here, so I could stitch them back together and create a 360-degree panoramic view of the celestial equator. In that video, I showed my first attempt of trying to render that image over top of everything else, but I also added another mode that I had included for debugging purposes and that I also showed to illustrate the process of how I went about stitching those images together. And so that would be where I'm interested in only the mask, so basically the panorama mask only. This is just a temporary setting that I have. When I include that and I step ahead, you can see that there's a portion over here that gets updated and the rest of it right now is left unchanged. And so that's what this other mode is. This other mode doesn't render the full image on top of everything else. When I had done that, just to make it easier to determine where I should render the image, I had placed the sun in the middle of the top half. So regardless of the day or regardless of the time of the year, the sun would always appear right in the middle here. And even with the analemma that goes like a figure 8, the sun would still stay in the middle and everything would shift a little bit further to the right or a little bit further to the left, keeping the sun dead center. And I wanted to try a different mode, which included what would appear like a stationary camera. The panoramic clip that I showed in the last video showed what it would look like if we were always facing the sun and the rest of the celestial sphere was in a 360-degree view around us. I wanted to include another mode that showed what it would look like from the camera's point of view, and the calculations were a little bit too involved for that video. So after a little bit of effort, since I made the last video, I now have included this extra mode where I can show what a stationary camera would look like. And so in this case, the camera will always appear here and everything else will rotate around it. And you can see that the camera stays stationary and everything relative to the camera moves in relation to it. I found another time period where there were a few days of clear skies. The last one was in October. This one is going to be in August. And just to remind you, for the clip in October, Procyon was about here, Orion was about here. It made Orion crossing my longitude somewhere around 2:30 in the morning. In this clip, you can see that it is in August, so it's about 2 months earlier, and Orion is still going to be during the daytime. I'm going to show you a short animation of what this looks like. Keep in mind that the clouds started to move in at the end of August the 1st, around midnight or in the early morning part of the 2nd. So I skipped from the 2nd to 6 p.m. on the 5th when the clouds started to part. And when that happens, you'll see that everything will jump quite dramatically and then it'll resume again, and it'll be a full 24-hour before everything is completely updated. And as I explained in my last video, I had a two-part idea that I wanted to implement. The first was the panoramic view like I've shown here for the south-facing camera. But I also wanted to do something for the north-facing camera, and after taking a look at a good number of days from the north-facing camera, I found a few days that were actually pretty good. So I'll end up using that, and it happens to be the same time period here. So the idea that I had for the north-facing camera was very similar to that of the south-facing camera, but rather than have a long 64:9 kind of aspect ratio panoramic view showing all the detail that the camera could capture, I opted to go with a 1:1 image like this, with the north celestial pole in the middle of the image like this. And like I did for the south-facing camera, what you see here, the little triangle that you see, is the mask that I'm using to create that panoramic view as the sky rotates around in the field of view of the camera. Unlike the south-facing camera, I spent a little bit more time and I fixed this up so I can show the full image. And if you look very carefully, you'll still be able to see the area that is masked will be the average of the various images that were stacked together, not just what is in that one image. First, I'm going to start with the normal panoramic view. This is similar to what I did for the south-facing camera, and that keeps the celestial sphere oriented as it would appear at midnight. As I move ahead and back, you'll see that the background will stay the same. You can see that this star here stays where it is, and the camera rotates around it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to play a clip of a couple of days that I've done for the north celestial pole. In this mode is going to be August the 1st, August 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th. I was able to accomplish that relatively easily by taking the image in question and knowing what the center of rotation was. I was able to rotate the image accordingly, and then once it was rotated, I could then apply the mask and essentially stacking together all of the pixels that are within this mask area. The trick was to be able to do something similar, keeping the camera oriented as if it was a fixed camera with the star field rotating around it. So just to make it easier to do that, what I ended up doing was I did all of the calculations that I did before, but then I did a final rotation back. So I still did the stacking as you see it here. I took the camera, I rotated it clockwise, I stacked it, and then what I did was I took the final image that I wanted to render and I rotated it counterclockwise by the same angle, and that effectively created a fixed looking camera with a moving celestial sphere around it. And it works relatively well, except for the dithering and the loss of detail around the timestamp that's in the image and that IPC that's on the image, namely like that. And if I move ahead, you can see it's still barely readable a little bit, but I'm going to play that animation as well right about here. And so with that, the idea that I had to celebrate the 1 year anniversary of having those cameras put up has finally been implemented. That's going to be it for now. Thank you for watching. If you like the video, I would appreciate the thumbs up, the subscribe, comment below, all that other YouTube good stuff. And I'm going to see you again in another video soon enough. So bye for now.